we're caught in the simulation. Appreciate you joining me, man. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I think to start off, maybe I'll just ask if you believe in simulation theory.
Stimulation theory.
Simulation theory.
Simulation theory. You'll have to brief me. I believe in stimulation theory. Tell me about stimulation theory.
I don't know if it's a real theory, Adam, but I do know that some people believe that the human race is actually just caught within a simulation, and there's a higher power overseeing this whole thing and just watching how it plays out.
Yeah, doesn't Elon Musk ascribe to that on some level?
I believe so.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a simulation with a drunk landlord, right? Like just making arbitrary decisions.
I'd agree. I think, have you ever had moments in your life where like, that just seems really surreal?
Yeah, and there's certainly been synchronicity and weird coincidences and stuff. I think as pattern-seeking animals, we look for coincidences that may or may not exist. Lightning means storm. A growl means lion. Prayers get miracles. So who knows? I want to believe we're in a simulation. I want to believe there's something more than this meat sack that I'm inhabiting right now.
Well, I'm sure as we were talking about on the phone, you had some sort of existential conclusion when you were in Bryce Park, right? Bryce Canyon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like 43 years old. I've lost a parent. I was raised Catholic, but then I discovered Carl Sagan and science. And I was thinking the other day, I was like 16. I was working as a lifeguard, and I remember just sitting with this gal who her parents were mathematicians, and I was like reading the Celestine Prophecy at the time, this book about like the spirit of trees and all this stuff. And I'm like, look at all the trees, the living spirit. And I really believed. And she was like, well, no, I don't believe in God. And I was like, what? Why? How? But it started this journey of like critical thinking. And as you get to middle age, you start to go, fuck. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can swear on your show here.
It's all good.
But you hope there's something more, and so I'm on a path now to try to, usually through nature, to try to, at least get some spirituality in my life, because it's pretty grim if it's this all there is, So I think that's why we gravitate towards telling stories, and I was reading this Reddit sub article about like how atheists deal with their own death, and are they more pessimistic, and how do they deal with it? And interestingly, a lot of them end up creating their own constructs. They create a narrative for their lives. They find significance in their lives in a way that religion gives a lot of people. So yeah, I'm on the path. I'm trying to figure it out. In terms of the simulation of it all, I mean, I feel like Mark Zuckerberg's going to figure that out. We're all going to be living in meta somehow.
Yeah, the meta is way over my head. I really still don't fully understand it. I actually bought my first NFT. I don't know if you're tapped into that world at all. And it had to be the most confusing purchase I've ever had in my life. Dude, like it was like translate Polygon into Ethereum. There's a gas fee, and then it changes the maintenance fee. And I'm like, what is going on here, man?
Yeah, the NFTs are a little above my head. I was listening to that Dogecoin story and stuff, and like, so the whole business behind it is really interesting, and it seems like the next gold rush. But it just seems like I have business friends who say that it's complete shamble. It's not true value, and it's all just an illusion. But and in terms of like living in a simulation, I just feel like it's bad for humanity. We're talking over Zoom right now, and it's like we are social animals, and we need physical social contact. And I fear for the future where we're all sitting in chairs like the end of Wall-E, like all fat and like drinking Slurpees, and and not actually being with each other. So, and the technology is only going to get more and more pronounced. So you're in this headset, you're in virtual space, and we're just not actually engaging in a real world way. So who knows, man? If the
Well,
pandemic continues, it's like maybe that's just the only thing we're going to be able to do safely.
well, I think like most technology, I'm sure people before the telephone came out probably had a similar sentiment as to you right now, saying like, technology is totally stripping away the human existence. But it seems like with every wave of technology, human spirit kind of pokes through a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, there was an amazing documentary that just dropped about Tesla, SpaceX, and how the privatization of space, and just all these really smart people trying to get us into space again. And there's a lot of good that's happening in the world. I think we with the 24-hour news cycle, it's just doom and gloom and gloom, and naturally because of this horrific thing that's happening in Ukraine, it just feels like the world is on fire constantly. And if you read a book like *Sapiens*, you realize we're actually much safer than we've ever been historically. And though we see these horrific mass shootings, there was another one on a subway today in New York City.
Yeah.
It just seems really, really grim, but we forget, it's not like the Mongols are coming in and destroying tens of thousands of people and, in these religious wars and stuff. So we are safer. It just feels like it just feels constantly, I don't know about you, but like the world's burning. So, we'll see.
Well, yeah, like think of this. Think of if you were on your hike in Bryce Canyon, no cell phone, and you're like, you know what? I want to go PR a climb. Like, I want to have the most elevation I've ever had in a day, or it's a really hot day. I want to get up on that peak. And you broke your leg. How are you getting down the mountain and finding medics?
Right. No, it's true. No,
Like,
it's true. Yeah. And, 150 years ago, I would have died from an infection. So, science sort of progresses and we live longer. And although it sounds like right now the median like life expectancy is actually going down a year or two. So that's kind of disturbing. It's been going up, 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 and then now it's we're gonna. So no, it's true. I mean, look, we have a lot of modern conveniences. The trick is to not be trapped by them. I mean, I'm so addicted to my phone. I couldn't imagine being in college right now trying to study, with the phone that I'm constantly checking. It's like I was telling you yesterday, like my ADD is on full parade, and it's hard for me to sit. That's why I love airplanes, because I can sit in an airplane and just work for 8 hours undisturbed. So that I think is a cognitive and behavioral component to it. But yeah, man, I'm not going to complain about technology. It's certainly, definitely part of my life. The trick is to not be chained by it.
there's also something stimulating about airplanes, just the constant vibration. I think for me, at least, like with my ADHD, I perform better at a computer if there's some sort of humming in the distance or there's some sort of motion.
Yeah,
So
some white noise.
exactly, you feel the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I do. I do. And I used to love going to a coffee shop because at least it felt like you were getting out and you could just work and then you could people watch and then you could go back to work and yeah, whatever works. I mean, I know writers who can just like sit there and just like lose everything and the cat's walking over their heads and they're just in it. And also like the older I get, part of my process is to be nonlinear, and to take a walk and to be all over the place. Sometimes ideas come from left of center and you have to be okay with that, and I used to think that writing was just sitting and staring at a keyboard, and that's not really the case. The hard work sometimes comes when you're not thinking about it. I mean, Steve Jobs famously loved to take walks whenever he had some major issue that he had. Let's go take a walk, and so there's something to that. You get the blood pumping, you get the brain going, change the scenery.
Well, do you ever reflect that maybe as profound and prolific as a director as you are, do you ever think maybe you weren't put on this planet to be a writer?
I still don't know what I want to do, to be honest. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I guess unfortunately, for me, it was like I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I love the socialness of making films and TV. I'm a good writer. I'm pretty decent. I wouldn't say that I'm Aaron Sorkin, but I am really good at it. But it's really hard for me. That being said, when I signed with CAA and I suddenly thought like, wow, I'm at one of the biggest agencies in the world, and I've made a commercially successful movie. I thought all these amazing scripts would come my way, but the truth is, it's really, really hard to write a really good script. Everything's been done, particularly in the horror genre, and the movies I make. There's just there's 100 new specs going out a day, it seems like, and horror crowd has seen everything, and so it's like, what is that fresh? That's why when a movie like Jordan Peele's Get Out comes along, it just feels like a revelation, because it's such a new idea through a unique storyteller's lens, and so we're always searching for that freshness. So that gets me back to, shit, I got to write my own stuff, because as a director, you want to be in love with the material, and a lot of times, because I am a writer, the bar is much higher, versus if you were just a director reading scripts and you don't have that other skill set, it's a lot easier to kind of attach yourself to something, because you don't have the option,
For sure. I mean, I've just had this revelation myself. Like, I just hate sitting down. And like, I wrote the last, well, dude, so I'll send you our movie and you'll see it. And you're going to be like, dude, this dude isn't a kick-ass producer, but he has no clue what he's doing writing a script. And I just sometimes think ADHD does not lend itself to just comprehensive sit down work. And you kind of got to use your superpowers in other ways.
Yeah, look, I think part of the journey we all have to take is, there's the dream of what you think. The ego tells you, oh, I want to be this. I want to be a famous actor. Well, if you're self-conscious and you're not a great line reader, and you have to be honest with what your skill set is. Look, that's not to say you shouldn't try these things. You shouldn't try to write it if that's what you aspire to do. But at a certain point in your journey, you have to be honest with like what your skill set is. And I tell young directors all the time, like, if you're not a writer, if you have to be super critical of your shit, right? Like, you have to be hard on yourself, because the pressure and the competition is so great. So if you try a couple of scripts and you get them read by people that are really smart, and you see that it's not really working, the script didn't make sense, the script didn't flow, this script didn't really have anything to say, well, then shift gears, and some people are born to be producers. They're personable, they're problem solvers, because like a producer has to be so even keeled, and like there's multiple fires going every day, and I'm a very emotional person. I feel things deeply. If somebody's having a bad day, I'm going to sense it and want to fix it. And so I wouldn't be a great person that would have to kind of, I get to be a little bit more artistic as the director, a little more emotional, whereas a producer tends to have to be Vulcan, and writers tend to be, there's two types of writers. There's the insular writer who really likes to be alone and go inward. And then there's the extrovert who is really, it seems like there's two diametric opposite versions of writers, and but the physical, I started working with a writing partner, and that made a big difference, because it wasn't so lonely, and we were held accountable to each other. And you could just riff. A lot of the work we do in the early parts of writing something is just sitting in my writing partner's backyard and just talking story, pitching it to each other, trying to make it make sense, just from a fireside camp story. If you can pitch it verbally in a very simple way, then you have something. Because movies have to be simple. They can't be dumb, but they have to be simple. Because particularly a theatrical movie, you're making a piece of commercial product that has to play, on the coasts, but also deep in Arkansas or wherever this multiplex is going to show it. So it's really tricky.
Now,
I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm rambling a little.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate it. I actually do know where your brain's going. And before we move on, can you just give a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do for anyone that's going to tune into this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Adam Robitel. I'm a writer and a director. I made a little found footage horror film called The Taking of Deborah Logan in 2015. And it was a movie about a woman who has Alzheimer's disease and a medical crew that moves in with her to progress her illness, and things start to happen, and we quickly realize there's something far more malevolent going on. And that movie was dumped unceremoniously to Netflix in 2015. It was like the beginning of like the Netflix boom. And over that, I was devastated because I'd worked for 2 years on this movie, and it was just like, that's it. No PR, no marketing. And over that Halloween weekend, 1 million people shared the movie on Twitter, and it had this groundswell, this little sort of like indie gem, and it kind of put me on the map. And from there, a friend, James Wan, had seen it and really loved it and tweeted about it, which was amazing, and that kind of opened the door to get me in on the short list for Insidious, the fourth Insidious movie at Blumhouse. And I remember I was so broke. I went into debt making my first movie. And I went into Blumhouse with like the last $2,000 I had in my bank account. I did all of these cool kind of animated storyboards, and I did a beautiful lookbook that took me a month to do. And I said, if I'm going up for this, I'm going to swing for the fences. And I got the job, and that was like such a huge change in my life, because I'm inheriting what is essentially a massive franchise. And so for me, and I equate directing an Insidious movie to like directing a TV series where I'm not coming in and reinventing the world. I'm sort of like a steward of like a world that's already established. And it was great. I mean, I learned so much from Lee Wanell, who wrote it, and he wrote Saw, and and he was an actor in the movie. And so it was like my first experience with a studio film. And then from there, while we were in post on Insidious, Neil Moritz, who's producer of Fast and the Furious original film, they had this little idea for an escape room movie, and my agents had slipped me the script, and I said, I didn't even know what an escape room was. I went out quickly and did like 10 of them in LA because they were super popular at the time, and I realized like, wow, this could be a really visual movie. And the producer said, we have one caveat: we don't want to make a rated R gory movie. We want to make a PG-13 movie that relies on suspense and not shock. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And at the time, James Wan was making all of these jumpery kind of like, ghost in the house movies. And so Escape Room became an opportunity to do a movie that was different, that was more about the Hitchcockian sort of suspense. And that was amazing. I went to South Africa, and, we built all these gorgeous, elaborate rooms. And yeah, it was a little $10 million movie, but it made, I don't know, 158 million worldwide. And so it was like, wow, I was able to go and make this little commercial hit. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And then now I'm working on a series with Netflix and Darren Aronofsky, and we've submitted all the scripts, and we're just waiting to see if it's greenlit or not.
Adam, you did not tell everyone where you were from.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Boston. Revere, Sevilla, girls with big hair. I'm from Revere, Massachusetts, New England. But I've been out here for a long time. I'll start talking normally, but I've been on the West Coast for 20 years. So, I feel like California is home now. I remember my guidance counselor at high school was like, California? What do you want to go that far for? Like, I'm like, you're my guidance counselor. Aren't you supposed to like, inspire me, Mr. Hooten? But
So was it hard for you to imagine a life in California when you were growing up here?
No,
it was always
no. I'll tell you, dude. I always fantasized about California. I mean, I always saw the palm trees and the beautiful people. And like, California was always like this mythic place. And then of course you go through your Jim Morrison phase, and you listen to the Doors, and you're like, Hotel California. It has this mythic thing to you. And then I remember I went to UMass Amherst with my friends from Revere High, and I come home and I got the pamphlet, and I'm like, grandmother was really close to me. I want to go to UMass Amherst, and she give me that. She pulled the pamphlet and ripped it in front of me. She's like, you're not going to UMass. You'll end up on drugs. I still ended up doing drugs, but it was in USC instead. No, man, I always felt like I was a fish out of water. in New England. And it's something about the weather. And, like I was telling you, I'm a big naturalist. I love going outdoors and stuff. So it was pretty easy. But then when I went to USC, and I luckily got into USC, which I didn't even know that it had a great film school, to be honest. I just saw palm trees and a really cool campus. And when I got there, I remember like 2 weeks of just drinking and going to like the frat parties. And then I woke up in my bed in my dorm room and I'm like, holy shit, I'm living here now. Like I'm not leaving, And so that started the journey. And then USC had one of the best film schools in the world. I'm going to class in the Steven Spielberg soundstage and the George Lucas building. And it was like, wow, this is a business. Like making film is actually a business. And that started the journey.
Yeah, I felt the first time I went to LA, it was the first time I actually felt like in the game. Like I'd never been exposed to other people trying to make stuff that's big and use visual effects and sell movies. And so out there, I think there's something to be said about actually being in the environment and then figuring it out while you're out there. But initially you wanted to act, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I just wanted to be. I was funny in class and I was popular, and I thought, I want to be famous. Like, being celebrity seems cool. Like, you get free swag, and but I wasn't serious, and I wasn't committed to studying, and I did a lot of partying, and I was just a mess in my 20s, and I was quite self-conscious on stage, and I did a little bit, and I was passable, but I was not. When I saw an actor, and this is getting back to what I was saying to you earlier about being honest with your skill set, and you have your passion and you have your ego telling you I should be this, and then you just like, okay, well, can I do this? And I saw some actors who were really good, and I was like, wow, I can't do what that person does. So why am I even going to try? And it wasn't a defeatist kind of thing. It was more just like stepping back and going, okay, what else can I do? And now I love the filmmaking process is much more. It's really long. They're marathons, and by the time you get into post on a movie, a studio movie, it's like a year, and then visual effects just are so tedious, but it's fun, and you're creating an entire world, and every little decision from the wardrobe to the props to the aesthetic is all part of my brain. And so I find that really rewarding. The most rewarding is working with a great crew. You just create this family. I've shot in South Africa, I've shot in Budapest, and you're working with these incredible technicians around the world, and it swells my heart to see. And I grew up in a working class, and my dad was a milk truck driver, and I just love my crew. You know what I mean? They work so hard, and I'm the guy going over and helping picking up lights and stuff like that. And I never have ego. I don't think, oh, because I'm the director, I can yell at somebody, I can do this, I can do that. And I just treat them with respect. And so that's the favorite part of it. And there's dark days on set. There are things that have happened.
I was going to say, sorry to cut you off. There must be days where you do have to act as an authoritarian, though.
Yeah, look, I mean, you always have to have confidence and know what the game plan is. And there are times where there's just certain things you can't control. There's going to be people with attitudes and things that just are outside of yours. So you have to be really zen about it. And, but I would never yell, safety's prime. I had a guy fall through a roof on an escape room. And I remember coming around the corner. It was a very complicated set with a moving wall that was on a hydraulic. And I just remember hearing this crash. And I was the first one up from Video Village and ran around. And one of my technicians had broken his arm. And he was in a place where he shouldn't have been. And I shut down set for a couple of hours. I was very upset. We did a big safety thing. And so you have the show, you have the weight of people's livelihoods, you have the weight of the studio, the money. There's a lot of pressure, and and I don't know how I did it, to be honest, because I'm not an anxious. I do have anxiety issues, I'll be honest. But when I go into making the movie, I go into this fight or flight mode, where I'm in extreme kind of like war mode for months at a time. And only once I deliver something, then I start to get into trouble, and all this shit comes up, and because I've been in that trench for so long. I don't
what do
do
you
well. I don't
mean?
do well with free time, to be honest. I mean, right now I'm in between on things, and like that's when you get somebody like me who has to be chewing on something mentally all the time. When I'm stuck on my own feelings, that's when it gets dangerous.
I'm actually with you on that. What is your lineage?
What is my lineage? How do you mean?
Like, where is your family from originally?
French, Canada, Norway, Italy. They all kind of, yeah, from Quebec and then down, uh, and then Italy. So I'm French, French, Italian, Scottish, Norwegian, and
Okay.
Irish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. There it is. I was gonna say you do have a little bit of that Irish mania that I got. That's what I'm
yeah.
attributing to some of the. I'm the same way. Like life's good when you got something to work on, but when you don't, that's when you start freaking out, right?
Yeah, and look, Boston. I think getting back to our roots, like there's a reason Boston. It's a very cinematic city. It's the birthplace of America. There's a lot of history, but it's also a lot of writers, a lot of smart people, a lot of colleges. So I think there's a lot of Bostonians in LA. It's a city that sort of breeds that artistic, aspirational kind of thing. And I didn't really appreciate it until I left. And now when I go back, I'm like, I did this awesome, like it was a beautiful summer day, and I did the Freedom Trail again, and it was just like just a perfect day in Boston. The whole new what is that, the water, the marina, not the marina, the
Esplanade.
seaport, yeah. And it's just like, wow, I have a new appreciation for a city that I didn't really understand in high school.
Yeah. Surprisingly, I had Lee Eisenberg on the podcast. I don't know if you know his work. So he did like The We Crash and used to be a writer and director on The Office. And
Awesome.
and he said like there were upwards of 12 people working on The Office from Boston, just
Wow, I believe
coincidentally.
it. I believe it.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Now let's just peel it back a little bit. So you're out in LA. What prompts you to make the first movie, and how do you get the bread to go do it?
I was I had written a well I should say I wrote two scripts that were kind of crap, and yeah, I shouldn't say crap. One was like a ripoff of Seven, and I was just trying to learn how to finish a script really for a couple of years. And and then I wrote a script called The Bloody Benders, which was based on a true story, and Guillermo del Toro optioned it. I was going to direct it after Pacific Rim, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like GDT is going to do my movie. So every six months, I would email him, "Dear Mr. Del Toro," like just checking in, and 2 years went by, and I thought like suddenly like manna from heaven, like all these opportunities were going to come. I've written a Del Toro movie, and it wasn't the case, and so. And then I thought, oh shit, I'm waiting here. I'm waiting. I might as well try to write something small that I can go get made. I didn't wake up and I never felt like I wanted to be a director. I don't even like telling people what to do. Like, if you wanted to have lunch, I'd be like, dude, where do you want to meet? Like, I'm not one of those people who's hyper controlling the way a lot of directors are. But my thought process was, all right, let me write something really small. And at the time, found footage movies were pretty successful. There was a movie called Devil Inside, which was terrible, but it made like a close to 100 million off of like a $100,000 budget. So that was my thinking. And
Blair
I had
Witch.
always Blair Witch, of course, was the gold standard. And I also had I had some experience doing documentaries, and I was an editor. So I taught myself how to edit. And so I figured if I made a movie that was found footage, there'd be more freedom to do it more like a documentary. And so that was my mindset. And then at the time, I knew Bryan Singer, who, as everybody knows, is persona non gratis right now, but he was a really smart guy and really a hypochondriac. He was making I had worked with him on Superman Returns, making of documentaries on Superman Returns in Sydney, Australia, and was doing all of these. I did 25 or 30 of these mini documentaries, like Clark Kent as he's flying and Superman, like the cape and all this stuff. So I was really good with documentary filmmaking, and I showed him a clip of a woman in advanced stage. She had early onset Alzheimer's, and this was like a 60 minutes episode. And she was talking about losing her mind and writing notes on mirrors, and she was in, and then it cuts to her a year later, and her skin is white. She doesn't recognize her husband, her daughter. She's in an adult high chair. And so I just said, I want to make a possession movie about Alzheimer's disease. And I could see his mind going, oh, that's really scary. And so I wrote the script with my writing partner at Brian's company at the time. And we wrote it, and we thought, oh, we're done. We did it. At first, we thought we could do like a 50-page, like just an outline. And then they're like, no, you got to write a script. And so we wrote, like, for 2 years, we wrote the script. I mean, it took us 2 years, multiple developments. And then I went out and raised the money with a friend, Krista Campbell, who does a lot of movies with Millennium at the time. And, every producer in town told me I needed $2.5 million to make this movie, to do it right. And so I was listening to that for quite a while. And then finally a producer said, look, I get you $1 million. That's the best you're going to get. And I was really torn, because I thought, oh, my vision and all this. But at the end of the day, you can make it work, if you have to. And yeah, dude, we went to North Carolina, shot it for 20 days. I found this amazing actress, Jill Larson, and Anne Ramsey played the mom and daughter. And it was just an amazing experience, because you could feel the crew, these women, these incredible actors were doing these things. I remember, like, Jill Larson is like writhing in bed in this old hospital in North Carolina. And my big, strong, like sound mixer guy, he's shaking. I remember his boom pole, like, just like, because of the performances she was bringing was so scary. And you could just feel it with the crew. Like, we were doing something kind of cool. And, I'm still so proud of that movie. And what's really tough, though, anecdotally, is like, we finished the film, and we had one test screening, and the test screening was terrible. We didn't have it finished. There's a famous shot in Deborah Logan where the old lady's mouth unhinges like a snake and swallows this little girl's head, and it's terrifying. But we didn't have that shot in this test screening. The movie wasn't really finished. And so what happens as a director is you do these test screenings, you get a number, and then your number basically dictates the fate of your movie, right? And so you come in, and I got like a shitty score. It was like a 39. Nobody really got it, and they bring in this like giant book of how your movie's not going to perform with any demographic. And I felt like a total failure. You know what I mean? I felt like I guess I got to figure out something else, because directing is not going to work. And that's why when Netflix picked it up and it became this like cult phenomenon, and now it hits top 10 lists all the time. It's considered one of the scariest movies, and so I'm really proud that with no marketing, my people discovered it. In some ways, it's actually more vindicating. So yeah, that, and I think anybody could raise 500 grand, $1 million for a film. If they get out there and they stomp hard enough. The road is narrower now, but I think it still can be done. But it all starts with a great script, and that's the hard part, is finding that great material.
Right now, let's say you have a script ready to go. So this is how I raise money for my movie. I went into Boston, I went door to door, and I pitched to Boston-based brands for product placement within the movie. So we funded all the money from Boston-based companies, and then you can see like the most cheesy, almost like Transformers, like Greg O'Brien CPA, Boston Empire, like right in your face. And so I had never heard of such an apparatus of someone going out and just finding someone to cut them a $500,000 check. So let's say you're back before the Deborah Logan days right now. How would you go and snag money for a script?
It's really tough. I mean, I'm a believer in the network of it all. I think it's hard. I couldn't imagine how you did it. I think the way you did it in Boston makes a lot of sense. But I think you need to get to LA, and you need to start making the connections. What I found was the equity investors, like these guys, these rich dentists and business people who just want to invest in movies. That's a small list, and they all know each other in town here in LA. And so you go to, you know, somebody who knows how to get into that circle. And when I was financing Deborah Logan, there was still this idea of like pre-sales, which is like this idea of like, you could sell it to the UK, you could sell it to Germany for X amount of money. And so they would back into a number based on like what these pre-sales were internationally. But to answer your question now, I don't know. I don't know how I would go about it. It's the industry has changed so much. I think certainly I would go to the streamers now, you know, because there's such a glut of streamers. But again, that starts with the chicken or the egg of the relationships. Like even going back further to the thing that put me on the map, the script, right? Like I had a relationship with a friend, Alex, who was an executive at Legendary. And then he slipped it to, once he read it, like I begged him. And by the way, I always say to writers, you get that one shot with that person, you know, you better have, the script better be good. Because if you screw up and you send some piece of crap that you farted out in 3 weeks, you burn that bridge. See, you know, so you wait until you send. So I sent it to Alex. He sent it to a producer named Don Murphy, and then Don Murphy sent it to Guillermo del Toro. So what I'm getting at here is you need these relationships, right? And I have every day, you know, and not you withstanding, but I have every day people reach out and they say, I have a script I want you to read, or you know, and it's like I'm right now I'm too busy because you know, and I used to try to answer everybody, and but if you get to LA, like that's the thing, you either have to go to New York City or LA. You got to go to events, you got to start meeting people, and you got to start making inroads. And then once you have the script, you got to get it to somebody who can get it to somebody. You know what I mean? That's the only way to do it, is with a personal relationship. And the internet is tough because, you know, there's just so many people constantly hitting people like myself up who are already kind of on the road. It's hard to kind of, it becomes background noise, versus if I had met you at an event and we commiserated, it's much easier for me to then go, okay, I'll take a chance, and I'll read one script, and I'll read the first 10 pages. And if there are misspellings and grammatically incorrect, or I don't know what the movie's about after 10 pages, I shut it, you know, because this person didn't do the homework, didn't study the craft, didn't know what makes a good screenplay, you know, didn't know how to root me with the protagonist. And so it essentially wasted my time, you know. But in terms of like the equity investors, like you know, if you're in a town like Boston, and you know, it depends on the project. Like if you know enough, you know, we always say it's not the super wealthy people who invest in movies because they usually know better. It's usually those mid-level wealthy people that because let me be clear, like most movies do not make money. You know, it is not a good business venture. I hate
Absolutely
to say.
Not. Absolutely not.
And you know, and these people, these high net worth people, they're going to have a contingent of, you know, finance people who tell them what decisions to make. But the mid-level people, the rich dentists and the entrepreneurs who want to be around the movie business, who want to kind of just do it as a lark, those are the kinds of people you want to kind of go to and sell them on the passion of the idea. You know, when I did the Taking of Deborah Logan, I had comps, right? I had 5 different Paranormal Activity, Devil Inside, and then I went down analytically and I showed, you know, the return on investment for one of these movies, if it goes through the roof, is astronomical. And so I made it really compelling, right? If I want to go make a movie about Gus the fisherman because my dad was a fisherman and he loved, you know, largemouth bass, like great, that's your passion project. But I don't know how that's compelling to somebody who's going to write a check for you, you know? So you have to do your homework and really, as a filmmaker, as a producer, really understand, like, is it commercial? You know, I have friends who write crazy, not commercial stuff. They love it. Biblical, gay, you know, romance scripts. And I'm like, well, that's great, you wrote that. It's a nice piece of writing, but nobody wants to see that. You know what I mean? So you have to be mindful of like, what is the audience? Who is the audience for that? And look, I mean, now with the internet and with streamers, like you can be a little more niche, but when you're starting out, you have to come in it with, I really believe, a commercial sense of like what's going to sell.
Well, dude, one thing that's really hard, and I'm very grateful for it, is I had probably, so this is my second film. I had probably already shot about 50 to 60 YouTube videos of sketches so I could learn how to edit, etc.
Wow.
It's
Great.
the ability that you can't just, the barrier to entry to make a movie is so high because it's so expensive. And so it's
Yeah.
hard to be like, it's hard for some kid to just come in and be like, dude, I really want to shoot a movie because I want to learn how to do it. And I've never done it before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The one thing I'd say to that is an antidote, and I agree with you, but it is so true now. Like my buddy Michael Chavez, right? He did a little, he came from commercials, so I shouldn't say he's not a great example. He's a really talented guy, but he did a short film that then James Wan saw. But David Sandberg, for example, he did a 3-minute short for Lights Out. It was a girl walking into a room, hitting a light switch, and then the wraith, the entity, standing there in the dark. And then she shuts the light switch off, the thing goes away. And it's just a great, simple 2-minute thing. And so, look, for the horror genre, you can make something with your iPhone in your girlfriend's apartment that could be really, really scary, and that gets noticed. You know what I mean? And as a director, like, I think you can do stuff for $5,000, pulling friends together, if you have a troupe of actors from Emerson or something, and you can do something that gets you noticed as a filmmaker. And that might not get you money for your first movie, but it might get you noticed and get you an assignment as a director. So I think that's the play. And look, good on you for making content, because that's how you do it. And that work is going to lead to other work. And again, it's the best case scenario is you could make a little short scene of something. Like Swingers is another great example of like just a bunch of dudes just going on a, this comedy about friends and relationships and going to Vegas. And I mean, Favreau made that for nothing, and it put him on the map. But he was in LA, he was a writer, he was an actor, he was around, he had young Vince Vaughn, he had all these actors around him. So he was in the right time, right place with the right voice, and was able to put that movie together.
Here's a question for you. So you make Deborah Logan in 2015, right?
Yeah.
Or it comes out in 2015. And then what year is Insidious?
I think it was 2017.
So how are you staying afloat financially during this time?
It was really tough. It was really, really tough. I did a lot of editing stuff. I mean, I did a lot of behind the scenes editing. There were still DVD kits then and like DVD extras. In the late 2000s, from 2010 to 2000, it was like this amazing DVD business where a lot of people like me, like this guy David Pryor, who just did this movie, the Empty Man. We would do, like, I did just a bunch of DVD EPK stuff, and I would get to be on set. I did a thing for Dreamgirls and these different movies, and so I would just edit. I edited a meth, anti-meth, documentary, and the editing paid pretty well, at the time. And I would get those like on the internet, and I would just apply and would cut them in my living room.
See, that's so crazy. Like here you are, your movies in post-production, it's on its way to being a huge hit, and you're still applying for jobs online. It's wild.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always the case, and and then when you get your first real studio job, you get into the DGA, but of course, you don't have much leverage. You don't really have much leverage until you've had a commercial hit. Like when Escape Room was a hit, then I had leverage over the studio, but before that, it's like I'm a dime a dozen really to them. So
you must have been pumped. Sorry to cut you off. You must have been pumped I'm familiar with it, but I think people listening to this won't be. Can you explain how the Blumhouse model works? And actually, you're going to make it sound a lot more clear than I will. But in my understanding, they don't pay directors very much, but they're like, hey, we'll finance your idea. We're going to shoot like 6 of these a year, and we know one of them is going to take off, so we're going to get our money back for the other 5. Is that right?
I mean, that's pretty right. They've really diversified now. Jason's doing a lot of interesting things in TV. He does do some bigger budget stuff. I mean, I think it is still the kind of like micro budget sub $5 million idea. And yeah, the idea is to do high concept ideas, that are really price contained. Because don't forget, even Insidious, the first Insidious they made for $1 million. James Wan and Lee, they made this little spooker movie, just down and dirty. And then it was a success. And then I think they immediately greenlit the second movie, and they gave them like 3 or 4, maybe 5. But even after the huge success of that, and then the third, they still kept the budget tight. And so, yeah, they'll directors like Scott Derrickson, these big name directors in the genre space, they'll say, hey, come to Blumhouse, we'll give you actual participation in the movie. Like for Escape Room, they gave me, Sony gave me net profit, which means nothing, right? Because like
God.
These movies are still in the black. They're still in the red. They still claim that they are not successful financially. I still get the accountancy papers, because like each movie. So for a movie to go theatrical now, you have to spend a minimum $35 million on advertising. So you're looking at a recoupment. If your movie costs $5 million, you need to recoup $40 million just to start breaking even with a theatrical movie. So the bar is high. I mean, Michael Bay just came out with a movie that did like 8 over the weekend.
Ambulance.
And and you get that first weekend opportunity, and then it just starts to drop and drop and drop. So if you don't open at a significant number, you're screwed. So yeah, but that's Jason's model. And Blumhouse, they historically have been really hands off. I think with some of the bigger IP projects like Halloween and stuff, they're going to be much more involved creatively. But that's what that's their thing, is to say to filmmakers, hey, you've been through the studio system. They meddle. They get in your shorts. They're constantly kind of like buzzing in your ear. So we're gonna say, like, you can have creative control for the most part, and the only caveat is you're not going to get a huge upfront fee. And that's enticing to a lot of people. They're hard. They're really hard. I mean, you're gonna get 25 days if you're lucky, maybe 30. Time is money. Escape Room, I had 55 days in South Africa, which was like a huge luxury. And the second one, I think I had 60 days. And so you just get to do more elaborate stuff the more time you have, excuse me. Look, I mean, I had 20 days of my first movie to direct it. And then with Insidious, I had 30 days. I was like, oh my God, I'm like James Cameron. Like I have all this time. And I just remember, like, there's a one scene where Lin Shaye's character, she comes down and touches a doorknob, and then she gets thrown back, right? And like, oh, that'll be quick. We'll do a quick stunt. We'll be done, bang, and then we'll be on the rest of our day. That took half a day to do, that one idea. And, so I think the big thing that the learning curve as a director is you think it's going to take, you always have to plan it's going to take at least twice as long as you think it's going to be. I remember writing all my shot lists, and then my big strapping AD came in, and he was just like, let me see that. And he just like crossed out like half my shots. He's like, listen,
we don't have time for those setups.
Yeah, we don't have the time, and so that's the hard part, so that's the Blumhouse model, and a lot of people, and I think Jason, because of his success, for better or worse, all the studios now they don't want to make genre movies for over $10 million. I have this awesome Cannibal Witch movie that is super fun with Sony and with Sam Raimi, and I need like $18 million. I need to be, that's not a lot more than 10, but I need that to build these really cool sets. And I'm struggling right now because nobody wants to make a genre movie over 10 million because of Jason, because of the success Jason's had. So it's tricky.
So how does the business of your film being on Netflix work? Is it similar to an artist like on Spotify? You get a percentage of streams, or?
It really depends. I mean, back in the day, it was like just a buyout fee. Like I think my first film, I think was like a $50,000. Like it was just ridiculously low. And no, you don't get to participate. And that's going to be the next big, particularly on the series side, on the TV side, is, if I'm Scott Frank and I make this little chess movie, this little chess series. What was that? The Queen's Gambit, and suddenly, 500 million people have watched it, or however many, some astronomical number. The director, the content creator should be able to participate in that, right? I mean, it's like, and that's what Jason says, like, Jordan Peele makes Get Out. It goes on to make $300 million worldwide. Jordan Peele gets a nice, big, fat check. And guess what? He should and so, but with Netflix, the big fight's going to be for them to be transparent with the eyeballs, like how many people are watching these things. They don't, it doesn't behoove them to give that information out right now, because the mystery is more beneficial to them, right? I mean, they can say something was hugely successful, but then we don't get to see all the turds that nobody watched. So that's going to be the
all we see is essentially like top 10 on Netflix today. That's all we really know.
That's all we really know. And, and that's going to be the fight, and they have a lot of competition now. They were the first adopter, but, now with Paramount Plus and with Disney coming in and and Apple just like spending like drunken sailors, like it's going to be really interesting, and, so yeah, it's a good time to be trying to sell content. It's not a great time to get super rich. Like that, if you made a show 15 years ago that went into syndication, if you're Brian who made House MD, he directed the pilot of House, and and then it goes on to become the most successful syndicated show in the, that's $40-50 million worth of residuals you're getting. Crazy money. So that paradigm is gone now. That being said, I can go tomorrow and pitch to 10 different buyers about my whatever new series I'm coming up with. So, there's a lot more mouths that are hungry. You're just not getting those huge deals that you were getting, 20 years ago.
So when are you going to direct the sequel to 127 Hours, given your affection for the canyons?
Oh,
is that on your mind at all? Like maybe some sort of outdoorsy movie, some exploring movie?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I'll tell you another time, but I was airlifted off a hike once, and I definitely saw images. I saw images.
What happened?
Dude, it was just stupid. I went up Sandstone Peak in Santa Monica, the mountains, and went late in the day, and I lost the trail. And it was a simple trail, and it was very simple, and I was an idiot, and it was late. It was like 5:30. And I remember just like bush, I saw a trail on the ridge, and so I started climbing through thorns and brush. And I finally got up there, and it's like, oh shit, this is not the trail. And I had no service. So I ended up climbing on this rock wall formation. And now I can hear coyotes, and I'm seeing James Franco's severed arm in my head. And I dialed 911, and I got the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, and they were like, you're not going to get out of there tonight. Hold on. And they've sent in, Ventura County sent in a helicopter. Oh and God. Literally, and then they're flying past me, and they can't see me. And with my last bar on my phone, I sent them an image of my coordinates. And then so I jump in the helicopter. I wanted to kiss the guy. I was so thankful. And and I said, do I have to pay for this? And they said the first time's free. The second time you have to pay. But yeah, I mean, wilderness horror, definitely. I have a couple ideas. My series has a lot of wilderness elements because it's set in Colorado in the summer in the mountains. So there's a lot of that, a lot of manhunts and really scary stuff happening in the woods. So hopefully I get to make that,
Dude. So were you injured on top of this mountain, or were you just nervous that
I was just I was scratched up and stuff. I mean, look, I like hiking alone, but it is dangerous, and and you have to be careful. And I got the Whitney lottery, which is the highest mountain in California, for my birthday in May, And I'm like, I don't know. I'd have to get up at like 2 a.m. and I certainly shouldn't go alone. But then I saw this gal, posted. She just summited it like 2 days ago, with this YouTube, and I'm like, well, if she can do it, but nature can turn on a dime, man. And there's a great little outdoor backcountry. It was a little horror film. If anybody's looking for something kind of creepy, about a couple that goes out camping, and it's a really good little indie movie. I think the director made it for quite a price. It's just sort of down and dirty. It's a great little wilderness horror movie.
Have you put any thought into maybe climbing a bigger peak, like in the Himalayas or a Kilimanjaro?
They're all on the list. I mean, if I do Whitney eventually, that's quite significant. It's 14,000 feet. I mean, Kilimanjaro certainly would be really cool just to have done it. I'm not somebody who's going to end up getting into technical climbs because I just am not, so we'll see. I mean, if I do Whitney, I don't, everything else is going to pale in comparison to that. At least in the lower.
I gotta Google Whitney because you were telling me about this on the phone. It's the first time
Yeah.
Oh, is it Whitney Portal?
Whitney Portal is where you start. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a race, an ultra marathon. I don't know if you ever heard about it, called the Badwater 135. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah.
So they start in the base of Death Valley.
They start in the base of Death Valley. Yeah. From the lowest point to the highest point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had I've had the race director on the podcast, Chris Kosman, and he's a real demon. He's a real psycho.
Wow, that's extreme. I mean, that's good on you if you can do that.
That's kind of like, as I was saying, like if I was to graduate in the ultra world, there are like 4 big races I would do. It'd either be Badwater 135 or then Leadville 100. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's kind of near some of the climbs you did in Colorado.
What's the most distance you've run?
100.
Wow, dude. And what is that? What do you do? Like a marathon a day? Like how do you sustain yourself? Like
those Irish demons, brother. No, it was 31 hours. So, and listen, I've had about now 6 or 7 pretty premier ultra runners on the podcast. These guys could slash in half my time, most of them.
Wow.
Like I'm on mile 60 and the first place guy passed me when I was doing my 100, just in total demon mode, just like a fucking great white shark out there, still in the night, and he's just a gazelle through the desert.
Do you just, because I usually hit a sort of a window. I hit sort of my runner's high like around mile 10, but then like I start to, and maybe it just, but like, are you just in constant euphoria, or does it ebb and flow and it's just pain, right?
Bro, no. Yeah. Once you get into the 30s, it's all pain, brother.
It's all just pain.
But I mean, with a marathon distance, like that's kind of what it is. It's like you hit a wall a little bit, then you break through the wall, then you kind of get back into euphoria mode, then you get out of it. I recommend, I don't know if you've ever done one. I think you should really try a marathon sometime.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I like keeping a little bit of muscle mass, and I'm so into CrossFit, and but usually the 13 miles, I have bad feet. I'm not young whippersnapper like you are, so we'll see. Maybe that's something. Maybe at 50, I'll have to do that, and I'll have to go at like 13-minute miles.
I thought the same thing when I started, that I was going to turn into a string bean, but I've actually gotten stronger and gained muscle mass via running.
Wow. Amazing.
I'm just saying that there's a lot of myths out there.
How are you feeding yourself like on the way?
I probably consumed close to 10 to 15,000 calories. I burned about 30,000.
Are people giving you like just little?
You have aid stations. There were 2 aid stations on the course, just constantly eating every 25 to 35 minutes. You got to get something down. Like, I never want to look at another Cliff Bar again.
Oh man. Wow.
And those are bomb.
And then what are you just like taking dumps like in like the bushes and stuff?
Well, we were in the desert, so there were no bushes. Behind the cactuses. Pretty intense.
Dude, that's incredible, man. It's really incredible. I mean, to push yourself to that limit, it just sounds astonishing to me. Like, yeah. How did you wake up one day and go, I want to do this? Like, what was the journey to that?
I think the natural progression of you choose, you can either stay at a distance or you can like keep pushing yourself, just like with a movie. I mean, how much was the budget on Deborah Logan?
$1 million,
Yeah, and how much is the most recent Netflix show? Like 50 million?
probably.
See, you just slowly elevated and pushed your limits.
Yeah, there's a big difference though. There's a big difference,
I'm trying not to sound crazy, man.
Look, man, you could have worse habits,
I could get out to LA and start doing tons of drugs.
Yeah, ultras are actually. It's funny you mentioned this because they sent me a script. This company, this ultra marathon runners that are invited to this like place, and it was just. But then like what you realize is sort of like the ritual, and like they're all there, but this company is like killing them one at a time, but they keep running. Like the whole movie is them running on this trail. And it's super freaky and weird. It was hard for me to imagine how to produce that,
I guess you could kind of go with an angle like Hunger Games vibes a little bit.
Yeah, it was very Hunger Games. Sure.
Yeah, I could see that happening. When I was out there, I kind of felt like it was Hunger Games. There was a 65-year-old woman behind me, and I was like, "It's me or you, lady."
Were you just super sunburned by the end and like just chafed and?
Well, I told you I'd got rhabdo, so I got pretty torn apart.
Dude, it's crazy.
Thank you. Take it as a compliment. Well, hey man, I had a really great time running this. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Good luck with everything, and good luck with your move, man.
Appreciate it. I'll before we end, I got to go over 3 things. The first thing is for post-production purposes. I'm only going to say it once. You have to say, "Hi, your name, and this is my golden hour." Directly after no break, "Hi, your name, and that was my golden hour."
Hi, this is Adam Robitel. This is my golden hour, like that.
You got part 1. Now we need part 2.
Okay. Hey, this is Adam Robitel. This is my golden hour. Hey, this is Adam Robitel. That was my golden hour.
It was about 99% execution. We'll take it.
That's why I'm not an actor.
I hear you.
I was trying not to say golden shower because
if I had $1 every time someone said, "Dude, is your name of the podcast The Golden Shower?" Okay, cool. Got that. Next, I'll get an address from you. I'm gonna ship you out a shirt. What size are you?
You send a medium.
Got it. Sounds good. And yeah, man, when I'm out in LA, I'll definitely shoot you a text. Hopefully you have time. I'd love to meet up sometime.
Sounds good, dude. Take care of yourself. I hope you bring that deer with you when you come.
I will, brother. All right, man.
All right,
great to meet
bye.
you. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure, no problem.
All right, bro.